Hey, Tom.
What's up?
Do you have any ideas what I should film for the first episode of the series?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so you have the Order of Curiosities, right?
Yeah,
Which is like an organization. So, are there a lot of members there?
there's a lot of members.
Yeah, right. So, how do you tell if somebody is an actual member of the Order?
Well,
Like they don't have any kind of markings or anything, right? So, what if? Listen, what if you create something like a passport, like an identification paper? And you can fill it with all kinds of like interesting stuff with like stamps and magical symbols and graphics and textures and patterns. There's a lot to explore there. It could be a very exciting project to make. What do you think?
identification papers.
Huh?
That's an interesting idea. Welcome back, everyone. This is Slava, and today we're gonna start working on our world building project, the Order of Curiosities. And I was sitting and thinking, what should we start with? And it all just came to me suddenly. We should start with identification papers, a passport of sorts. I mean, if you are a part of an organization, you want to have a sense of belonging, and what a better way to serve that than to create an identification paper. Something magical and mysterious, and I think it's gonna be the perfect thing to kick off this project. What are you doing? Can you not touch my things, please? Tom? Don't you dare. Welcome, you made it to the first episode and I'm really glad you're here. So let's start. So we're thinking identification papers, but why? So let's think about it. The Order of Curiosities is an organization that wants to protect magic. That's sort of the root of their goal. Now they have to be tracking, exploring, researching, cataloging everything about magic, and they have to do it in secrecy. Because they do have a conflict with another entity, whether it's an organization or a single person or whatever it is, that would try to stop them and prevent them from doing that. So there's a lot of people and things you have to manage. So it's only natural for an organization like that to become bureaucratic in a way. Now let's take a look at the things that I've previously designed for this project and see what we can actually use, something that we can perhaps recycle or we'll have to redo altogether. One of the things at the core of it is branding. And one thing to keep in mind is that the project itself and the story, they're going to be overlapping in some areas, but not completely. So for example, I do have the logo that I've been using forever for the Order of Curiosities project, which is online. It's an online presence on social media, on the website, on any other platform, essentially. Now, the logo is great, but it almost like has no place in the story itself. And I thought that the more appropriate way to show an emblem or a logo is to use a monogram. And that's how I ended up with two particular monograms. One was an evolution of the original OC monogram that kind of like went through a transition of trying to make it a little bit more old, if that makes sense, a little bit more vintage, maybe time and era appropriate, even though I'm not entirely sure on the timeline of the story yet. And the second monogram is the TOOC, the Order of Curiosities. This is going to be the main monogram, and it went through many iterations of trying scaling, different sizing, highlighting, texture, coloring, to get to the point where it's simple, effective, it works, and we don't have to really think about it a lot. I will most likely come back to it eventually, but I really rather not, so hopefully this is the end of tinkering with that. By the way, let me take you back for a second. Back in the day when I wanted to start a passion project, I didn't know what it's gonna be, and I started drawing line art, and one of the first things that I've done was this particular owl. This owl probably deserves a whole episode dedicated to it, and we can one day explore that, how a simple, minimal, small design can actually open the gate to a lot of creative ideas. And I'm sure we'll come back to it. But using that particular owl, at one point where I decided that I want to create the Order of Curiosities, I thought to incorporate it as the main emblem of the organization. And you can see I kind of like even went through different explorations and seeing how that could work. I think at this point we're gonna ditch this idea, but we're gonna keep it in the bank for something else. Now, after creating the logo, I'm going back and starting to attempt to design the identification papers. It all starts with the basic layout, and you can sort of see the evolution from the bottom left to the top and then to the right. My thinking process was simple. I'm just gonna lay out the things and then start filling in slowly. And that's exactly how it started. I just laid out the monogram, I wrote identification, boom, done. No, I'm just kidding. And then you look at it and you realize, okay, it's empty, so I need more things. So how do we make it more interesting? So you start experimenting with borders, and that's exactly what I did at the top version. You start bringing in more typefaces. We actually use the owl at this point and the logo, which we're no longer gonna use as we just discussed, but it's slowly getting somewhere. And then we get to another iteration. So we create the monogram, we play around with the typography more, bring texture, start creating patterns and designs to fill it in and make it more interesting. By the way, when working with digital art and designs, I think this is an absolute must-have habit. When you're creating something, don't just create on top of it. Get to the point where you feel like you've reached a certain limit. And when you want to try a different direction, don't continue working on the same file. For example, if you're an illustrator, make a copy of it, work on that. Get to a certain point where you think you're gonna branch off, again, make a copy of it, continue working on that. Because there's nothing worse than getting to a point where you really don't like something and you think that you sort of had it maybe half an hour ago or a day ago, and now you can't go back, you can't undo 10,000 times. So keep copies of everything. It is gonna save you a lot of times. So at this point, we're also exploring the inside of the trifold identification papers, like I've mentioned before, right? And again, bringing more typography, starting to lay out things, bringing in stamp impressions, anything that can help it look more authentic. And at this exact moment, I'm looking at this magenta, purplish kind of design, and I'm thinking to myself, why that color choice? You have to really question yourself sometimes. I mean, it's flashy and it's interesting, but why? So then I decide to do a different color variation, something that makes a little bit more sense, something a little bit more muted. I'm thinking that perhaps the golden parts of this whole design can be almost like stamped gold or embossed or debossed gold. I think it would look kind of nice if you were actually to go and print that. And again, looking at the interior of the ID, bringing in more things, bringing in more textures, more stamps, more things. It's a magical document, so it should feel magical. So this design on the left is actually the one I ended up with, and I still like it to the day. I think it works really well. There's something really neat about this swirling pattern, and I can actually show you how to do that. It's really easy. There's enough life to it, so I think it sort of works. But I've been getting different ideas in my head, and I think I really would like to explore them. And in the end of the episode, we can put them side by side, and you can help me decide which one works better. So now, organization, bureaucracy, paperwork, typography. And I think that's exactly where we're gonna start. I do have my colors picked, and by the way, I kind of like use these little bars sometimes. I know I have the Illustrator swatch palette, but sometimes it's just more comfortable for me to create a bar like this that I can drag around, and if I need to pick a color, I just simply select the object and then eyedropper tool it. It's sort of like a habit I developed over the years, and might work for someone, might not. You'll just see me doing this sometimes. So let's throw some music, we'll source some type, and we'll discuss at the end the choices we made and how we're gonna apply them. By the way, sometimes you see me opening my master file document. It's just a way for me to organize all the collection of typefaces I have over the years. I still need to add mine. I do create some of my own typefaces. So maybe one day when it gets way too messy, we can come back to that and organize it a little bit, and I'll show you how I use these spreads as a quick way to reference typefaces in my projects. So this is what I ended up with, a collection of different typefaces. So we have something that is a little bit more blocky, something that is etched or engraved. We have a typewriter style typefaces, we have handwritten typefaces, because what I want to do is to source a collection that can be used to serve all the bureaucratic needs of this organization. Now, after I've sourced all of the typography, now I'm going in and starting to work at the relationship of the typefaces, trying to understand which ones are going to be bigger as used as headings, which ones are going to be smaller as body text, the proportions, sometimes colors. What I want to create is little vignettes of how we can use them together. Now, I also went in and did another version of the monogram. I'm not gonna bore you with the details, but essentially it's just a bunch of circles, some lines that extend almost like in an array-like fashion, and then we laid the monogram on top of it and cut out an area around it so it's a little bit more readable. And this is how we ended up with these two versions. I think at some point I have a third one that I have in mind, and I have very particular applications for that, so I think I'm just gonna do it in my own time and throw it in somewhere in the end so you guys can see. It's been over a week now. I had a little flood in my studio and I sort of put the project on a hold. Well, not really, because I still would work on the project, but I couldn't record any of the videos because there were people coming in and out and it's really noisy, but I still recorded my progress, so we're gonna go over a few things now. So let's go over what we've done so far. Now, we've done the versions of the monograms and I've created another one off camera, so this is pretty much what we have so far. Now let's jump into the little graphic assets. We're gonna create as many as we can, just think of anything we can. I do have a mood board for inspiration, so maybe we can grab some ideas from there and just see what we can create and what we can later use inside of the identification papers. So this is what I've got so far. I've created a bunch of little graphics, little stars and whatnot. Anything that can be used as a little filler, maybe they can be used as assets to create patterns or anything just to spice up the design. And then obviously I had to create stamps, and stamps, my way of thinking about it was that there's probably many departments, so we're gonna be as creative as we can, have the freedom to create and think of any of the departments within the order and try to think of what they are responsible for and create a design language that would be appropriate for them. So yeah, little graphics, stamps of various sizes and shapes. So we have the circular ones, we have the long squared ones, we have other containers to put any sort of information for dates and whatnot. Just trying to think of as many ideas and solve them from different perspectives to see perhaps we could use them in some way. I would imagine as we go through the project, I would be adding more and more to this, but for now this will do. And so now let's move on to the actual design of the ID. So over the weekend, I actually jumped into Procreate on iPad and I started just doodling and trying to come up with the ideas for the identification papers. And my initial thought was I want to make a simplified version of that, a toned down version. And I've tried maybe 5-6 different styles, different layouts. And I think I came to a conclusion that if I want to design one piece for this whole entire project that would be as intricate as possible, it's probably this one. And I know I'm always trying to battle that thinking, right? Because not everything is supposed to be designed to the fullest extent. But here, I do believe it might be an appropriate place to try it. So that's exactly what I did. And so let's jump into the time lapse and you guys can see how that went. And now I'm just gonna jump into Illustrator right here and I'm just gonna go over, vectorize all the paths and add all the details that are needed for the spaces that felt empty and try to get this design to be as close as possible to the finished version. And just when you think that everything is going right,
Never pressed Command plus S, and now his progress is a mess with autosave not working. What a loser. What?
what did you just say?
Autosave not working
No, the second part.
for the user.
I actually managed to recover the file, so thank God I didn't have to redo this whole thing again. It didn't take long, but still, it's just annoying. So now I'm just finishing up the back cover design, which consists of 3 parts because it's a trifold design. And I think right away we're just gonna move into the interior part of it. And since we've created a bunch of assets, I think it's time to utilize them. And in the process, we're also gonna borrow from the previous design, but only the good things, and see if we can build on that a little bit more. So for the magical symbols, simply what I'm doing here is I'm just trying to come up with anything that looks a little bit obscure. The only thing I'm gonna keep in mind here is that I want to have the same stroke width, so all the symbols look kind of like from the same family, more or less the same height, and the rest of it is just pure playfulness. So maybe we're gonna create a dozen or so here and later use them in the project. Now remember the magical symbols that we just did not too long ago, and now it's time we're gonna actually use them. Now, in the process of creating this ID, this version of the ID, I thought it would be kind of neat if the ID itself would be also kind of like used as a wallet of sorts. So maybe we can have two slots where we can put two cards, and I just didn't want to put any sort of cards. So I thought, what if we create something that is like a license or something like that? And that's exactly what we did. I created a way pass and a warding permit. The way pass, it sort of gives you an all access to the transportation in the magical world. I would imagine there are common modes and less common, less safe transportation modes, and this just gives you the access to all of them. Now, the warding pass is sort of like a license to wield more powerful magical weapons and artifacts, and perhaps use more dangerous spells. And the aspect of secrecy naturally creates the need to be more selective with who can go about using powerful forms of magic, so it kind of like made sense that somebody would have a license to do that. Well, I think we're done, sort of. Probably we'll come back to it at some point, right? Nothing gets left untouched forever. So let's take a look at the final design. I'm gonna just walk you through it, explain the thinking process during this whole thing, and after that I'm just gonna show you side-by-side comparisons against the old version, and you guys can help me decide which one is better. Even I already kind of know what I lean towards, but nonetheless. So we're gonna take a look at that, and after that just some hero shots and call it a day. Alright, so let's take a look. I think with the back design I did it exactly as I wanted to. Not in a visual way, but in the feeling kind of way. When I think a lot about my designs and things that I want to create, I often rely on the feeling that I want to achieve rather than the visual aesthetic that I want to get. This was a perfect example of that. It's an iterative process where you add and remove things and try new things until you sort of start to get to the idea where it feels right. And that's the most important part with anything that I create. So the back cover features 3 panels. The one on the right is obviously the front, the one on the left is the first insert, and the one in the middle would be your back. So the 3 panels that I've created, they have almost like 3 different functions, if we can say that. The front panel, it's straightforward, right? It's the front of the identification paper. The middle panel, which is like the back of the ID, this is where we have just the numerical panel at the bottom and the secondary logo, and it's stripped of most of the design except for the border. And I think at the contrast of the front and the back, they work really well together. And then the panel on the left, what I felt like it could serve as is almost like a magical ward, like a magical protection of sorts. So this symbol that we use in the middle with the eye and the magical writing, it almost feels like it's a security mechanism of sorts. I actually also went and created the new background, that deep maroon kind of like cloudy look, because I think the original that I used might have been a stock picture from somewhere. So this one was created from scratch, and it was really fun to do that. Now, if we look in the interior, now we also have 3 panels. So the panel on the left is almost like your the main portion of your identification. So it has your name, your date of birth, and all the information about height, eyes, hair color, and anything to sort of identify the holder of the document. Now, you can also see that I refrained from using the year, and this has a little bit to do with the lore because I'm unsure what time period this whole story is set in, but also from the perspective that if I ever want to print these and send it to some friends or some future subscribers, we don't have to pry on their private information, and we can literally just come up with a system to write the year in a magical language. Now, the middle panel, it has the secret oath proclamation. It just says that this document has been issued by the Order of Curiosities, and that by signing this document, you acknowledge the value and importance of the knowledge contained within, and you agree to protect and uphold the principles of the order. It's sort of like a contractual obligation between the member and the order. And obviously we have a space for the signature, the space for the issuing officer's signature. So it kind of like makes it official. And now the panel on the right, this one I had a lot of fun with coming up with ideas for it. Obviously we have the spaces for all the different clearances and permits. So we have like 6 places for the stamps, and those could be whatever. Those could be clearances to use magical objects, security clearances to access certain departments or certain knowledge. You think of it and we'll make it happen. Now, this section where you see it says official business, the way I thought about it, it would be kind of neat if you have a different status in your workplace right now, and somebody could easily reference what the status is, whether you're on official business, you're on vacation, you're on field research, your location is classified or whatever, or you're temporarily misplaced and nobody can find you. And you can see I sort of also created this divot and a cutout in the design, and this is sort of, I'm just thinking ahead because I would like to create this in real life one day. And I'm just thinking how the mechanism would work, and I couldn't find a simpler way than just a rotating disk inside this document that you can sort of just rotate and put in the desired status. Then we have the security clearance, which is straightforward. The 2 slits for the cards, like we've mentioned before, the wording permit and the way pass. The way pass, I'm not 100% happy with it. I think it still needs some work, but I just can't come up with anything right now, and I'll probably revisit that at a certain point. And the last part inside this ID design is the occupational part, which on the left side it just shows your veteran status, whether you're like a workforce veteran or a combat veteran. I don't know, maybe Wizards had some great wars that we need to write about. Who knows? And on the right side, we have the occupation and occupational traits, and these are the symbols that we've created earlier. I think the way I kind of tackled it reminds me a little bit of stats in video games, your character stats. And because it's cryptic enough, it kind of makes sense that we can put it inside of the ID and nobody would ask any questions. So here is the side-by-side view of the early version and the current version of the ID. And I really like what I've created here the past week and a half. But do let me know your thoughts, which one you lean towards more. I do have my favorite already, but I would still love to hear your opinion about it. So this is it, guys. Thank you for your time, for coming and checking this project out. I really appreciate you being here. And if you have any questions, any comments, anything you want to say, just drop a comment and I'll answer it to the best of my ability. So now let's take a look at the hero shots. Stay kind, stay curious, and go create something, because it is absolutely worth it. And I'll see you guys soon.